The Dolphins' dilemma. Could trading Jaelan Phillips be the smart move Miami refuses to make? What happens when loyalty becomes the enemy of logic? When holding on to a talented player might actually be holding your franchise back from the painful but necessary reset it desperately needs. The Miami Dolphins find themselves at exactly this crossroads, and the Cleveland Browns might just be offering them the lifeboat they're too proud to climb into. Let me paint you a picture of where we are right now. The Dolphins are limping through another disappointing season, sitting with a record that screams mediocrity louder than a foghorn on South Beach. Meanwhile, the Cleveland Browns, yes, those same Browns everyone loves to mock, are eyeing one of Miami's most explosive defensive weapons, linebacker Jaelan Phillips. And honestly, this trade makes so much sense it hurts to think Miami might actually pass on it. Bleacher Report's Christopher Knox recently connected these two franchises in what could be one of the most mutually beneficial trades we'll see before the deadline. Phillips, playing on his fifth-year option and coming off a massive fumble recovery against the Jets that helped Miami scrape together their first win of the year, represents both tremendous value and a difficult decision for the Dolphins front office. He's talented, he's productive when healthy, and he's exactly the kind of player Miami should be shopping right now. But will they? That's the million-dollar question keeping Dolphins fans up at night. Let's talk about Phillips for a moment. This isn't some washed-up veteran desperately clinging to relevance. We're talking about a 20-something edge rusher who's racked up an impressive 22 sacks across his first 42 games in this league. That's production, folks. That's the kind of disruption every defensive coordinator dreams about when he's on the field and healthy. Phillips is a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks. He's got the speed, the technique, and the football IQ to wreak absolute havoc in the backfield. But here's the thing that makes the situation so complicated, so heartbreaking for Dolphins fans who invested their emotions in this player. Injuries have plagued Phillips over the past 2 seasons. His availability has been inconsistent, and in a league where the most important ability is availability, that a red flag waving frantically in hurricane-force winds. Miami knows this. Cleveland knows this. Every team with a competent scouting department knows this. Yet Phillips still holds significant trade value because when he plays at an elite level. Now, let's examine Miami's situation with the cold, hard honesty it deserves. The Dolphins are not in a good place. Friends, while they share an identical record with the Browns, their path forward looks drastically different and significantly bleaker. The AFC East isn't exactly a cakewalk these days, and Miami's chances of clawing their way into playoff contention seem about as likely as finding a snowstorm in Key West. Their division is tougher, their injuries more devastating, and their future more uncertain. Then there's the Tua Tagovailoa situation. The perpetually struggling quarterback has Miami handcuffed to a franchise player whose health and performance remain eternally questionable. The Dolphins don't have adequate backup options, and every game feels like a high-wire act without a safety net. Compare that to Cleveland, who might genuinely be just one quarterback away from legitimate contention. The Browns have the pieces. They're just missing that final critical component. The Dolphins? They need multiple pieces in multiple positions over multiple seasons. That's not a quick fix. That's a renovation project. Here's where it gets really interesting and really painful if you're a Dolphins fan. Reports suggest that head coach Mike McDaniel and general manager Chris Greer entered this season already on shaky ground. Another losing campaign might not just be embarrassing. It could be career-ending for both men. Their coaching and managing like their jobs depend on winning now, because they literally do, and when you're in survival mode, you don't always make the smartest long-term decisions. You make desperate decisions. You hold on to players you should trade. You mortgage the future for a present that's already slipping away. And then came the Tyreek Hill news. The explosive wide receiver suffered what's being reported as a season-ending injury. And just like that, Miami's offensive identity evaporated into the humid Florida air. Hill was supposed to be the difference maker, the guy who could stretch the field and create opportunities for everyone else. Without him, the Dolphins' offense looks ordinary at best, anemic at worst. Every problem just got magnified. Every weakness just got exposed. The outlook just got darker. This is why trading Phillips makes sense for Miami. Not because he's not talented. He absolutely is. Not because he's not valuable. He definitely is. But because the Dolphins need to face reality and start planning for a future that doesn't include this current core, they need draft picks. They need young, cost-control talent. They need to rebuild, whether they want to admit it or not. Phillips on his fifth-year option doesn't fit that timeline. He'll be looking for a big contract extension soon and paying premium dollars for a talented but injury-prone edge rusher when your team isn't competing is organizational malpractice. Now let's flip to Cleveland's perspective, because this is where things get really juicy. The Browns already have a formidable defense. We're not talking about some bottom-feeder unit desperately needing help. Cleveland's defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz has built something special. They pressure the quarterback, they stop the run, and they force turnovers. Adding Phillips to that mix? That's not fixing a weakness. That's turning a strength into an overwhelming advantage. That's the kind of move championship teams make. Imagine Phillips joining forces with young linebacker Carson Schweissinger, who's shown tremendous promise this season. Picture them flying around the field together, one with veteran savvy and explosive athleticism, the other with youth and untapped potential. That's the kind of pairing that keeps offensive coordinators awake at night, drawing up protection schemes. That's the kind of defensive depth that carries teams deep into January. Knox's analysis correctly identifies Cleveland as having a more flexible schedule ahead as they return to the United States. This is a perfect time to add impact talent. The AFC North remains wide open. Nobody's running away with it. The Browns have every reason to believe they can make a serious playoff push if they just add the right pieces. Phillips could be that piece. He could be the difference between watching the playoffs from home and hosting a wild card game. And here's the beautiful symmetry of this potential trade. Both teams get what they need. Cleveland get a proven pass rusher who immediately improves their Super Bowl chances. Miami gets draft capital to begin the rebuild they're too stubborn to acknowledge they need. The Browns are a quarterback away from being legitimate contenders. The Dolphins are multiple positions away from mediocrity. Cleveland should be buying. Miami should be selling. It's economics 101 applied to football, and it's so obvious it's almost painful. Phillips himself might even welcome a trade to Cleveland. Instead of suffering through another lost season in Miami, he'd be joining a team with legitimate playoff aspirations. He'd be playing meaningful games in December and January. He'd be showcasing his skills on a bigger stage, potentially setting himself up for a massive contract next offseason. It's a win for everyone involved. If Miami has the courage to pull the trigger, but will they? That's what makes the situation so fascinating and so frustrating. The smart move is obvious. The right move is clear. Trade Phillips, accumulate assets, and start the inevitable rebuild while you can still get premium value for your veteran pieces. But front offices facing termination don't always make smart moves. They make desperate moves. They double down. They convince themselves that somehow, some way, they can salvage the season and save their jobs. The clock is ticking on both franchises, but for completely different reasons. Cleveland's clock is counting down to their championship window, potentially closing. Miami's clock is counting down to the realization that they're not competing anytime soon. One team should be aggressive buyers. The other should be reluctant sellers. Will this trade happen? Your guess is as good as mine. But should it happen? Absolutely. The Dolphins have an impressive edge rotation with Zach Sealer, Bradley Chubb, Matthew Judon, Chop Robinson, and Phillips. That's depth most teams would kill for. But when you're not competing, depth is a luxury you can't afford. Depth is what contenders need. Rebuilding teams need picks. Miami needs to choose which one they are, and they need to choose quickly as the situation develops. One thing becomes crystal clear. The Dolphins are at a crossroads, and the path they choose will define their franchise for years to come. Hold on to Phillips and cling to false hope, or trade him and embrace the painful but necessary rebuild. Cleveland is offering them the chance to make the smart choice. The question is whether Miami's pride will let them take it. What do you think, Dolphins Nation? Should Miami pull the trigger on this trade? Would you rather see the team face reality and rebuild, or hold on to hope and veteran talent for one more desperate push? Drop your thoughts and comment below. And don't forget to smash that like button if you want to see more honest, unfiltered analysis like this. The Dolphins' future might depend on the decision they make in the next few days, and we'll be here covering every twist and turn of this fascinating situation. See you in the next one.